super chat here from Mix Master Mike. Any starting pitchers left outside of Crochet and Flaherty the Dodgers could realistically get before the deadline? Is Chris Bassett or Kevin Gossman realistic? We appreciate the super chat, Mike. As always, we appreciate everybody joining us live. But this kind of sets us up to a bigger conversation we wanted to have, which was, is there another big move coming for the Dodgers? I would argue that if they go out and get a starting pitcher of a quality of the guys like we're talking about here, then I think that cements this trade deadline as a success for the Dodgers. Right now, I think they're looking at like a C+ at best as far as a trade deadline grade, which is better than an F. You know, as some of us might know from high school and college days, it's better than an F, but it's not necessarily successful given the standards that we hold ourselves to. That we're 4.0 students over here, Greg. C+ aren't going to get the job done at the trade deadline. Okay, but give me your list, Greg, because we were texting about this briefly. As far as starting pitching goes, I think we all agree it's the biggest need, especially now. Give me who's at the top of the list. Who's on the list of guys you'd be happy with?
I mean, like, I think that if they actually do get Crochet, I might be able to convince myself to be happy with it, but I don't think I actually am. If they actually happens, I'm sure I'll be like, yeah, okay, this is great, fantastic. But honestly, on the surface, it just doesn't look good for Crochet for me. He's tripling his amount of innings he's ever thrown in his career, and it's not going to be close. I don't believe he actually had a good outing in his last outing as well, but he's also making demands now too, where he's saying that I will not be a reliever in the postseason. I will not pitch in the postseason unless I get an extension. Okay, well, so I'm sorry, guy, but this is not your choice. You're if you do come to the Dodgers, you're coming to the Dodgers because this is what you're going to help win a championship. And you're going to be a guy that has to have positionality as much as the word that the Dodgers absolutely love. Everybody plays in every position for the most part around here. And if you can't go to the bullpen, then I have no interest in you whatsoever, because especially with how much you're pitching, it just seems like it doesn't work out. So I'm out mostly on Crochet. You can convince me for Jack Flaherty, but Flaherty to me has not been good for 4 years, even though he's having a good year now. He was really good for the Cardinals about 4 years ago. I really only go all in, and I know it's not going to happen. They've already said it's not going to happen, Jeff and Matt, but I would go all in and give him as much as you possibly can for Skubal and make that happen, because that can help you for years to come. I know it's not going to happen, but that's really the only starting pitcher that I see that will be an absolute difference maker and be somebody that you can slot right into the staff for the postseason and be totally fine. I don't think anybody else on that roster does it.
If they said, hey, River Ryan and Justin Robleski, that's our starting point for a Tarik Skubal trade.
If it starts and ends right there.
Well, it doesn't end. We're 75% of the way there.
I'm moving both of those guys for Skubal. Wow. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I get that it's 2 for 1 and they've looked good, but again, we don't know what they're going to become. We know what Skubal is. He's going to be the AL Cy Young winner.
Yeah. Matt, just out of curiosity, where are you at? Like, if River Ryan, Justin Robleski, and a Dalton Rushing or something, if that's the 3 guys that it takes to get a Skubal trade done, would you be comfortable with that?
If it's only those 3 guys?
Yeah, and then we're talking guys kind of like they traded today, sort of hovering around the 20 spot in the organization.
Yeah, I probably am doing that. I mean, I think that's trading both Ryan and Robleski would hurt, but you're basically replenishing them with a Cy. Not basically. I mean, you're replenishing them with a Cy Young caliber pitcher, so that addresses your starting rotation. Now, Dalton Rushing, I think, is somebody like they do need to do something with him. Like, he's a big trade chip right now, because what are your plans for him? You just signed Will Smith to this extension. You have the greatest backup catcher in Austin Barnes right now on a career hitting streak. So Dalton Rushing, he's blocked, right? And Will Smith's not going to kick out to DH. Is he going to play third base? Probably not either. So Dalton Rushing is sort of, your trade. And then you do have additional catchers in the organization, younger catchers behind him that could then come up once Will Smith starts to get older in age. And so if it's those 3, you can probably talk me into it.
Yeah, and Skubal, by the way, has 2 more years of team control after this.
Exactly.
So you're getting 2.5 years of him. Look, I mean, it's been interesting because obviously most people were unfamiliar with River Ryan until a month ago, and now in a lot of people's minds, he's become untouchable. And I've seen it. I get it. It's just crazy the swings that we will take after 2 starts at the major league level. So I'm with you. But I think I agree with you that by all accounts, Detroit is not interested in trading him because of that 2.5 years of team control. I'm with you on Crochet. And I've kind of been like this the whole time. The innings limit thing terrifies me. The role terrifies me. It only got worse when he said, I'm not pitching in the playoffs unless there's an extension. And I'm not even I almost applaud the selfishness and the sort of, hey, take care of yourself. You are having a great year. It's like you said, 2 to 3 times more than you've ever pitched before. If you can get the bag now, more power to you, bud. If you could sign $100 million contract, knock yourself out. The flip side to that is it tells me he might not believe in his own arm to keep this up. And that terrifies me a little bit. So I'm with you. I wouldn't pay I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, on the Crochet deal. What they would have to give up was the same type of package we were just talking about for Skubal. It would be for Crochet, and that would be way too much for me. So Matt, to me, Jack Flaherty's the guy I like the most because I think he's really good right now. I wouldn't be worried about him in a playoff spot. And he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So the cost wouldn't be crazy. I don't think we're talking River Ryan, Justin Robleski type guys. No, I mean, you look on your face. I know it's a trade deadline, but it's an immediate hang up if they ask for River Ryan.
Right. And I think that's to me, I think Jack Flaherty is having a nice season. I know he's had some injury concerns in the past. And so it's a good year, but is it just sort of a flash in the pan? And hey, if you strike when the iron's hot and he continues to have a good year, then great. But at what cost? And I think seeing what Kikuchi just went for and what some of the prices are, the asking prices are, maybe it's not literally River Ryan for Jack Flaherty, but it does seem like you're not necessarily going to be able to get any sort of reasonable or fair deal, or even maybe overpay a little bit. You might have to overpay by a lot to get Flaherty. And so that's what concerns me, because if that's at that point, I don't know if I do it. And I know I've texted this to you, Jack Flaherty, you have River Ryan at home who kind of profiles in this similar way, hard throwing right-hander. You even have Bobby Miller if he could get back on track. So I'm just not sure if I would go down that route because of what I fear the asking price is going to end up being.
Close your ears, guys. There's going to be nerd stats coming at you right now. There's percentiles and red and blue, and so I'm just warning you. I know. Yeah, Greg's getting close to nerd stats, Matt. He's a big OBP guy now. That's that's the halfway house to nerd stats.
I mean, OBP is so much different than WRC plus an X bacon. It's
anyways, Jack Flaherty, 93rd percentile in strikeout rate, striking out 32% of guys this season. The walk rate, 94th percentile, just 4.5%. The whiff rate is elite. The expected ERA is elite. Exit velocity, chase rate are all very good. And so, again, I know we joke about the nerd stats. The reason these numbers are helpful is because when a guy like Flaherty goes from a 4.99 ERA last year and a 1.58 whip to 2.95 and 0.96, you say, all right, what are we really doing here? And it was much like James Paxton at the beginning of the year. The reason nerd stats are helpful is because when Paxton was awesome for the first 2.5 months, if you looked at these numbers, you say, it's not going to last. There's nothing sustainable here. It's smoke and mirrors. It's batted ball luck, whatever. With Flaherty, you look at this and what's the recipe for success? Swing and miss and not walking anybody. He's literally one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball, not just in one of those categories, in both of those categories. He's 28 years old. He's a local kid. So I think there's the possibility that if you do pay up for Jack Flaherty and get him in the organization, it's not unexpected that he might sign an extension with you if everything works out. And so you might end up getting, the 4 or 5 years of team control for the cost of a guy who you only had to pay for 4 months of team control. So that's why I like Flaherty, not because I think he's a better pitcher than Crochet necessarily, but just because the cost profile comparatively, the risk, all of that kind of a thing, that's where I land with him. I mean, he made 27 starts last year, so a little bit of durability shown last year at least. I know he's had injury problems prior to that, but Flaherty for me is the guy that I know the Yankees are close to. But Greg, if I were going to go kind of put my sights on one dude and try and hone in, it would be Jack Flaherty.
I mean, Jack Flaherty can be helpful, but everything that you see just look at his past. I mean, outside of 2019, when he was 4th in Cy Young voting and actually was getting MVP voting as well, he's been bad. He's just been bad up and down. He never had much better than they had 1 year was a 3.5 ERA just about, and his FIP, which here's your nerd stats that I like. The FIP. You like the FIP, you do. It's always high. It's always over 4, and even now it's still over 3. I mean, he's just not a guy. And even if you look at his postseason stats, He gives up hits. He gives up runs. He's not a tremendous. I mean, it's very small sample size, obviously, but in those games in the postseason, just hasn't been that great. He's pitched 4 times. He's just about a 4 ERA. His WHIP was 1.3. Even last year, he had a 2.5 WHIP. Like, he's just not a fantastic pitcher to me. I don't think he's a difference maker in the postseason, and that's where I'm looking for. If you're going to move these guys, some of these prospects, it better be for someone that's actually going to make a difference in the postseason. And I don't know if Jack Flaherty is that guy that is going to actually make a difference in the postseason. So to me, I don't want to make a move just to make a move. And I think that's where Matt was going early on, was like, just don't move things around just to move chess pieces around. It doesn't make sense. And Jack Flaherty, as much as has had a good year and all those numbers, I don't know if that's sustainable. And I don't think you're going to get it in the postseason. And if that's the case, I'm not in on it.
Yeah, and that's why I was glad they were out on Yusei Kikuchi, who was a guy they had been connected to, because that was the type of player that I'm like, I just don't get it. Like, to your River Ryan point, like Robleski, Landon Knack sitting right there, like they could just, these guys could give you 75% of the production, not cost you anything. And I didn't think Kikuchi was going to be a guy they were counting on come postseason time at all. 2 more notes on Flaherty, Matt, and then I'd love to get your thoughts. I do think there's some significance to a guy who comes up as a huge prospect. That tells me there's a little bit of a pedigree. There's a little bit of a reason to believe. This is the reason a lot of people were skeptical of a guy like James Outman. He has the breakout last year, and people are saying, look, this came out of nowhere, and then he struggles, and maybe they were right. Maybe it was a flash in the pan. With Flaherty, he comes up. He was really good in 2018 and 2019. And then from there, you can kind of tell a story as to how we got to this point. 2020, weird season, as we know, 40 innings pitched. 2021, injuries limited him to less than 80 innings. 2022, 36 innings. Last year, his first season, full season back, and continues to struggle in the midst. But I just see a pattern there, and there's a narrative that I can tell myself as to, okay, this is a guy who's battled through injuries. Last season, first time he's healthy, gets traded midway through the year. This year, he settles in. The walk rate is down. The strikeout rate is up. And all of a sudden, it's back to, at just 28 years old, by the way, being the guy that kind of everybody expected him to be 4 or 5 years ago. Matt, where are you at on Flaherty? Like, if the Dodgers were to go add Flaherty and that's it, it's Rosario, it's Edman, it's Kopech, and it's Flaherty. Is that a successful, satisfying trade deadline for you?
I would have to see what they gave up for Flaherty. That's my big hang up right now. Is I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle between you and Greg, which is great for our show because we have every opinion covered. Like I think he can be a little bit more impactful than Greg is maybe expecting. I'm not quite as bullish on him as you are. I do agree with your points, Jeff, that there is the prospect history and all that, but also by that same token, like the injury stuff that he's dealt with, like that concerns me as well. So ultimately, I would have to see what they were to trade for Flaherty. If it's nothing crazy and that ends up being kind of their big, addition for the rotation, I think you could talk me into it. But then for me, the bigger concern and then the bigger question now becomes is how much pressure and expectations are on Yamamoto and Kershaw and even Bobby Miller to, potentially get back and at a higher level than what we saw this year, and for Gavin Stone to keep doing what he's doing. So then it just becomes a matter of, okay, like it's a little bit of a repeat of last year where the Dodgers saying, hey, we have XYZ coming back and we have these other guys that we are expecting to just start performing better. And if that doesn't happen, then you're ending up in kind of a dangerous spot.
Yeah. Looking at the rotation, excuse me, we did this with the bullpen and with the bench. Currently, you've got Glasnow, top of the rotation. You've got Yamamoto, obviously a major question mark. Kershaw, question mark. Gavin Stone, rookie, pitching well, but I think safe to say a question mark. River Ryan, question mark. Robleski, question mark. Knack, question mark. Bobby Miller, 12 question marks. Walker Buehler, 14 question marks. You go down this list, and there's a world where we get to the postseason, and I tell you, hey, Glasnow, Kershaw, Stone, and Ryan, that's your 4, and we don't hate it. We feel pretty decent about it. There's also a world. I mean, but like River Ryan and,
I don't think we do.
I mean, talk me through it. The way that Stone and Ryan have pitched over the last, River Ryan's made 2 starts, Gavin Stone over the season. Like, I know the name doesn't flash sexiness to you, but if we're talking about actual on-field performance, I don't know how you could be disappointed if he maintains that all the way up until the postseason, and then heads into the postseason looking like the guy we've seen this season.
So Gavin Stone, to me, I really like him. I like a lot of the stuff that he's doing. But if you go into just his game log by itself, you can see in him that it's starting to catch up to him. He's being relied upon to 3 of his last 4 starts. He's given up 4 runs, and he's only gone 6 innings 1 time in July by itself. That to me means he's starting to get tired. That means to me that he was a really strong pitcher in that first half, and it was looking like he was going to be an all-star level starter. I think he was 9-2 going into the all-star break, and now he's 9-4. And giving up runs, and it's consistently happening. So.
Fair.
Look, I just don't feel as good as you. I think when it comes to Gavin Stone, I really like his game, and I think that he can be impactful and maybe even be impactful in the playoffs. But if he's your number 2 starter, I don't feel good at all. And if you're telling me that even if you get Jack Flaherty and you go and you say it's Glasnow, Flaherty, Kershaw, Stone, I'm not feeling good about any of that. I feel terrible, actually. I don't feel good about the postseason in the slightest. It just seems like another situation like it was last year, where Bobby Miller, when Kershaw's your number 1 starter, and Bobby Miller, who's did exactly this, was your number 2 starter and got blown up. I don't feel good about that at all. Without Yamamoto or getting some massive pitcher like Skubal, that's not happening. The pitching staff looks horrendous to me.
Horrendous feels strong. Matt, I'd love to get your thoughts. Horrendous feels very strong to me. This feels like spoiled Dodger fans complaining about the pitching staff. But where are you at, Matt?
I think, again, somewhere in the middle. Again, Jeff, the rotation you laid out, assuming the trends that we have seen through the first half and now, more than the first half, the All-Star break doesn't break up the first half of the schedule.
Sure.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
What we've seen so far in 2024, if those trends hold, then fine. I can be comfortable in the rotation with the rotation. But again, my concern is that that's counting on not 1 thing, not 2 things, not 3 things to go right. And we've seen baseball way too often. That just doesn't happen. And so that's what my concern is, that I can't necessarily believe and bank World Series aspirations on, hey, these 4 or 5 things are going to go right. And that's how the Dodgers are going to end up winning a World Series. If 2 of them go right, maybe you can figure it out. They do have a talented lineup that is, if the the stars are starring, if they show up and do well, that helps obviously. But I just don't. It's not likely. I'm not a betting person by any means, but it's not a safe bet to say Gavin Stone is going to go wire to wire for the first time in his career and really uphold the pitch to the level that we've seen, as great as he's been. And Clayton Kershaw's return from shoulder surgery is going to be perfect, and things will be fine. And I forgot who else you named. Yamamoto. Yamamoto's the big question.
I didn't say Yamamoto.
Okay,
that was I'm projecting. That's the negativity I'm projecting here.
Okay.
It's in a world even without Yamamoto. It was Glasnow, Kershaw, Stone, and River Ryan were the 4 names I mentioned.
You would be hoping that look, we saw River Ryan in a hostile environment against the Astros. I thought he handled himself well, so that that's what I think fans would be grasping onto if River Ryan is starting a playoff game. But still, a playoff game is going to be different than even what it was at Minute Maid Park. So it's just as Laura's saying, too many question marks. That's my hang up with the rotation. Is on paper I could see how it can happen. I just don't believe that all those things are going to go right.
Yeah, let me just clarify real quick, and then I'll come back to you. I promise, Greg. I'm not saying, hey, write in permanent marker that all 4 of these guys. I'm just saying there's a world where Gavin Stone goes into the playoffs with a 3.5 ERA. And just because his name's Gavin Stone, we might not feel as confident as we would if that was, Bobby Miller with a 3.5 ERA and the same underlying metrics underneath it. I'm not saying we should all project Clayton Kershaw to be awesome, because obviously what we've seen so far gives us reason for pause, I guess, whether you were optimistic or pessimistic about him. And River Ryan's only made 2 starts. My point is, I agree with you. We can't project everything to go right. I think so far we've projected everything to go wrong, and it has. Walker Buehler, worst outcome possible. Bobby Miller, worst outcome possible. Dustin May, worst outcome possible. Yamamoto, worst outcome possible. So I think we've kind of had the luck go against us so far. So I'm just painting a world where, even though I'm saying they need to go out and get a starting pitcher, I don't think it's cross the Dodgers off with a permanent marker if they don't get a starter, is my point. So, Greg, I apologize. I'm coming back to you.
No, it's not that. I mean, horrendous was probably too strong a word. Maybe went a little bit overboard, but at the same time, I don't feel confident. I don't feel confident that those four that you mentioned, what was it? It was Glasnow, Kershaw, Ryan, and Stone. Yeah. I don't feel confident that those four can get you to a World Series. And let's be honest here. What are we looking for the Dodgers this year? We're looking for a World Series victory this year. This is to me a very, very important year for the Dodgers. So if you give me those four starters, as much as we don't really know what Ryan is after 2 starts, the fact of the matter is it's only been 2 starts, and you're going to rely on a guy that has, by that time, has maybe 8 to 10 starts underneath him. You're looking, it's a little bit tough to go in that way. So, and Stone, again, we saw what his numbers have been looking like recently. He is giving up runs recently, and he's not going very, very far into the games either. That's, to me, is what the concerning thing is, because throughout this season so far, he's gone 6 innings consistently, and that has dropped off very much so. That's why I'm not confident in Stone. Has nothing to do with his name. So let me ask you your own question.
Great.
If you have those 4 guys, are you confident in a postseason run to the World Series?
Look, my caveat is always, I'm never confident about any postseason run because of the way baseball is set up. I think the essence of this Dodgers team is not going to be their starting pitching. It's going to be putting out the best lineup in Major League Baseball, because they have Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman and Will Smith and Teoscar Hernandez and hopefully Max Muncy 1 through 6, and then a 7, 8, 9 that we just talked about that's much improved over what it has been for the entirety of the season. So the Dodgers have gone into postseasons with 3 aces, and it's gone sideways. We mentioned Bobby Miller, a guy everyone felt great about. He was the one guy we felt great about going into the postseason last year, and he was a disaster. And so, there's a part of me that I see people in the chat joking about PTSD. I understand all of that, which is, again, to be clear, why I'm sitting here saying they need to go out and get Jack Flaherty, because I feel great about Glasnow, who, don't tell anybody, but his playoff numbers have been really, really bad in his career. I know who he is as a pitcher, and I'm just going to bet on the larger sample size, but the postseason stuff hasn't been great for Glasnow. And so they have an ace in Glasnow, and I think, and I truly believe this, I think they can put 3 competent starters behind them. They're probably not going to be, on par with, if they match up against the Phillies, they're going to have a pitching disadvantage in 2 of those 3 games, probably, outside of Glasnow, right? But at the same time, I think if this team's bullpen gets their crap together, it can be a great bullpen. And I think the lineup's going to be great. And I just think that's going to be the recipe. It's not going to be 1 through 4, throwing 3 aces out there. I mean, honestly, if Yamamoto comes back, it doesn't change. Yamamoto's an upgrade, I agree, over a Gavin Stone. And yet, I don't know, not a massive one, especially if he's only back for the last month of the season. So that's kind of, Greg, to answer you, that's where I land the plane. I think the starting pitching as currently constructed is above average. It's not great. It's above average. They have an ace, and they have 3 guys who are solid. I think that's where it's at. And, I think that, and to answer the big question, I think they can win a World Series with that group.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. If you do, I'm a little more skeptical, but we've gone through this very many times, Jeff, that you are the one that's overly positive about everything. I tend to lean on the negative side of some of these things because, we've been through this so many times, Matt. You've seen it as much as anybody. So look, if you're telling me that Flaherty makes you feel, Flaherty would make me feel better in a short sense. I was never high on Flaherty from the beginning, so that's why I'm a little bit off on it. But if that's what I can, just like Crochet, I can wrap my head around it and make it okay, this is going to be the guy. I'm just going to be skeptical when it gets to the postseason because he has not been something. And now if you're telling me that Glasnow, I didn't even think about it. Don't start making more negative thoughts in my head, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think Flaherty can help. The question for me with Flaherty is, like I said, is just what is it going to cost? Because to me, he's not a frontline ace. And Jeff, as much as I do agree with you, there is probably a high probability that he would re-sign with the Dodgers just because he is from Burbank, local kid, and all that stuff. That's not a guarantee. And so, if that's not a guarantee, he's not necessarily a frontline ace. To me, there needs to be kind of a line. And I'm not somebody you guys know. I don't hang on to prospects just for the sake of hanging on to them. But I don't necessarily agree with a complete overpay by any means either.
real quick, just as a fun exercise. Last year, obviously, Rangers versus Diamondbacks in the World Series. Here are the two pitching rotations that were in that lineup. Okay. On the Rangers side, you had Nathan Eovaldi, 3.6 ERA, Jordan Montgomery, 3.2 ERA, Max Scherzer, 3.8 ERA, Andrew Heaney, 4.1 ERA. That was their 1 through 4. Diamondbacks, Gallen, 3.5 ERA, Kelly, 3.3 ERA, Fat, 5.7 ERA, and then a bullpen game in game 4. So again, they're not going to win the World Series based on their starting pitching, but my thing is just let's not pretend like teams haven't done it with way worse than what the Dodgers would be. And the Dodgers, again, would be doing it on the back of scoring 6.5 runs per game is the recipe for winning the World Series.
I can wrap my hand around almost any rotation. Doesn't mean I'll feel confident about it. Yeah, but at the same time, it comes down to the offense, and it comes down to being healthy offensively and being able to hit. Because as we've seen always consistently, they just forget how to hit in the postseason for whatever reason it is. Guys going 1 for 22 between Mookie and Freddie last year, something along those lines. Like that can't happen again. And Shohei needs to show why he's Shohei, and that we've actually seen him in a postseason game. So if we can put up 5 to 6 runs per game on a consistent basis, I would feel great. Absolutely fantastic. But I don't believe Max Muncy is coming back. That just seems very, very long. But he would help lengthen that lineup so much and really help over at third base, even though he's not the greatest third baseman. That would help a ton. But it's offense. It's offensively that needs to be had.